Hey guys, welcome back to RPO Restorations. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I posted a video concerning spark plugs. If you missed it, you can check it out at the link up top or in the description. But today, we're going to expand a little bit on that topic, and I'm going to talk about the types of spark plugs that you should be using in your 80s or 90s carbureted or TBI GM car or truck. So stay tuned, we'll jump in and I'll break everything down for you. Now, there are three main types of plugs on the market today, and AC Delco offers all of them, so we're just going to touch on each one a little bit. The first and mainstay of spark plug technology is the copper plug. These plugs have been used in vehicles virtually since their inception. There is absolutely nothing wrong with them today, and in fact, I recommend using them in your 80s or 90s GM car or truck, because that's what they were designed to use. Now, as you get out of the copper plug, you move up to the next step in cost, and that is the platinum plug. Platinum metal is more harder than copper, so it's a little bit more expensive, but they last a little bit longer. And then as you move up in price again, you get to the iridium plug. Now, there's a lot of debate whether copper, platinum, or iridium have a better spark. I'll leave that up to other guys out there who can test these things, but getting back to iridium's just a little bit harder than platinum. Now, I don't think you need a platinum or an iridium plug in your 80s or 90s vehicle for two reasons. Number one, the main reason they started rolling these plugs out is because the change intervals have gotten longer and longer and longer, and the difficulty in getting to the plugs has gotten harder and harder. For instance, I own a 2016 Jeep Wrangler. In order to get the one bank of plugs, you have to remove the intake manifold. Not exactly a quick and easy job. So that factory manual calls for iridium plugs because the metal is harder, the service interval is longer. However, in an 80s or 90s car or truck, they're much easier to get to, and you can change them out once a year if you so desire. And along those lines, reason number two, especially if you own a carbureted vehicle, about once a year you should be taking a look at the condition of the plugs. In the previous video I talked about that, but that will give you an idea of how your engine and your air fuel mixture are going. So you definitely should be pulling your plugs. There's no need to spend the money on something you're going to pull and probably replace anyway. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the numbering system or scheme that AC Delco uses on their copper plugs so you can figure out the best plug for your driving and engine conditions. Now, this numbering system kind of changes a little bit once you get to the platinum and iridium plugs, so today we're just going to focus on the copper. But AC Delco uses a numbering system of letters, numbers, and letters. Prefix letters, numbers, suffix letters. So the first part of this numbering system are the prefix letters. Now, these will usually be in a copper application CR or just the letter R. C stands for a copper core plug. R stands for resistor type. Most cars made after the 1960s are designed for resistor type plugs. I wouldn't recommend using non-resistor type plugs. There's some debate on the amount of resistance in the hotter spark, but for 90% of the applications, unless you're using these for a straight race car or drag car, in which case you're going to be using something totally different anyway, you want to stick to a resistor type plug. You're going to have a lot less problems and a lot less headaches with those. Plus, that's what the engineers at General Motors designed for these motors. Okay, now we get to the first number in the numbering system, and that should be 1 or 2 digits depending on the type of motor in your vehicle. This number stands for the thread size of the plug, whether it's a 4 for a 14 millimeter, an 8 for an 18 millimeter, or a 10 or a 12 for 10 or 12 millimeter thread size. The next 1 or 2 numbers are always going to stand for the thread count. Now we get to probably the most important number of the plug, and that comes right after the thread count. That is the heat range of the particular spark plug that you are looking at. These will run on a scale from 0 to 9. 0 being the coldest, 9 being the hottest. What does that mean? Well, a colder plug is going to dissipate heat faster into the engine block, and the plug and the tip are not going to get as hot as a hotter plug. Now, that may sound good on the surface, but keep in mind that the hotter the plug gets, the more deposits it burns off. So if you use a colder plug, or a plug that's too cold for the application that you need, you're going to wind up with a spark plug that gets far more deposits on it and fouls faster than a mid-range plug or a hotter plug. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, if you use a plug that's too hot, it's going to retain heat a lot faster, or retain a lot more heat and not dissipate it into the block as quickly. And it's going to burn off more deposits, so it's going to stay cleaner. But if the plug gets too hot, you may get into a situation where you have detonation or a ping or a misfire or something like that. So if you're getting into changing your plug's heat range for the first time, I'd recommend staying in the middle and going one step hotter or one step colder, putting some miles on the vehicle, and then seeing where you end up and seeing how the plug handles the conditions that you're driving it in. Okay, now that we've gotten through the heat range, we're at the suffix letters to the plug numbering system. And most of these letters stand for the type of seat, whether it's gasketed or tapered, T being a tapered seat, or whether the plug is an extended tip or not. However, there are charts out there to help you out, and I will include a link to one of those in the description of the video if you want to read a little bit more. Right, now that we've gotten through the numbering system, that brings us to the last part of the video, and probably one of the most important things when putting plugs in your vehicle, and that is the gapping. Most plugs come pre-gapped, but think about it. If you're putting plugs in a 30 or 40 years old car, they may not have the same gapping system that they have before. So always double check your gapping. I've gotten boxes where 7 of the 8 plugs have been gapped correctly and 1 has been way off. So get yourself a cheap gapping tool from an auto parts store like AutoZone or O'Reilly's, something like that, or OEM makes a pretty decent one. And always double check the gapping before you put a plug in an engine. Also, when you pull your plugs to check how your engine's running after so many miles, double check the gapping again. You want to see if there's any abnormal wear or things like that before you put them back in. This way you can get a better idea of what's going on inside your engine. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you were able to learn a little bit today about these spark plugs that General Motors and AC Delco use for your vehicle. I'll see you on the next one.